U.S. focus. We believe that there's a special mix here of capital and talent and mentorship that really can't be duplicated anywhere else. Sasha, we'll start with you. Is that still true? Is there something special about Silicon Valley, or have other nexuses of the global economy duplicated the energy that we have here?
How many minutes do you have? Of course, it's a very special place. But having said that, I believe that centers of excellence exist all over the world. And while Silicon Valley has developed the way it has developed, and go look at the results in all those major companies, I can name you pretty much about a dozen centers around the globe where technologies are created. Now, what makes Silicon Valley different, there are other elements which create this innovation ecosystem which embrace an entrepreneur and the technology. And that's the only difference. But is it the only one? No, it's not.
What do you see?
So I'm enjoying the data. Thank you very much for putting these forward. My background is not entrepreneurship, so kudos to the entrepreneurs at the panel. But public policy is my background. I come to the Valley to really peel back the layers of what's here and how it can be replicated elsewhere. And I just have to highlight page 15, bullet 3. The highest share of science and engineering degrees in the EU are in Portugal. And I think that this will matter hugely going forward. For those of you who don't follow data, just a week and a half ago were published the global science and engineering results globally, and the US was not in the top 10. And what I think Silicon Valley has had over time to offer is already been answered by Sasha. So I'm going to answer what we don't have, what we desperately need, which is some really brilliant science and engineers to take us forward. And so there is ample opportunity globally to compete. And I think with numbers like this, there's a huge opportunity and potential. Having said that, high growth entrepreneurship, as these entrepreneurs will tell you, is an extremely rarefied space. And so access to serial entrepreneurs is what differentiates Silicon Valley, truly. That and access to capital, we like to throw our money around a lot here. But that access to serial entrepreneurs is really the key. So as you think about building your startup wherever you are, you can find talent and robust talent everywhere, and I do believe that truly. Access to that serial entrepreneurship is something that is an entrepreneur's journey, as I see it, and certainly the differentiator in the Valley that needs to be replicated elsewhere.
Michelle, I'm going to give you a different version of the same question, which you can ignore. But I was going to ask you, could Cloudflare have started and have succeeded as it has outside of Silicon Valley in, say, Russia or Portugal or China?
The answer right now would be no. But, if you think about it, the Valley's been working on being the heart of entrepreneurship for 60 years. They have a 60-year head start on all the other countries that have kind of figured out, hey, if there's something on entrepreneurship, I want to replicate this in my home country. And so I think, today the answer is no. I think the question is, what's going to happen 20 years from now? I mean, if you're a country like Portugal or London, the city of London is doing a lot, or a country of Singapore, Chile's doing a ton, where they're trying to enable entrepreneurship within the country. This is not like a 2 or 3 or 4 year strategy. It is a 20-year commitment. And again, the Valley is a huge head start, and that's where you've seen all these mega exits, which is why you have a lot of mentorship. You have all these financiers locally that are willing to give capital to some really crazy ideas. When we started Cloudflare, our goal is to rebuild the internet. Now, 4 years ago, when there was 3 of us pitching investors to say that, most people laughed us out of the room. And there were some people who said, that's awesome, I want to be a part of it. And that's amazing. And now we've done a really good job of executing on that, and so we've had people come along for the ride. But you have to have people who think like that. And it's not just the financiers and the entrepreneurs, it's an ecosystem. And so you need law firms that are willing to take a risk on a company that can't pay them very much on day one, with the promise of one day when we're big, we will pay you a lot. Same with banks, financial institutions, where if you are trying to get a bank account and you're just like an early stage startup, in a lot of countries that's really, really, really difficult. But the Valley, with like Silicon Valley Bank, actually takes chances on these small little companies. It gives them a bank account to be able to enable it. So it's an ecosystem. And then there's, of course, all the, same with the accountants and all these different parts of the ecosystem that matter a lot to be able to be successful as a business.
And the pesky technology journalists.
And the media that will talk about the startups. It's true. I mean, in a lot of like other markets, the media won't talk about early stage companies because they think it's not news worthy.
You have to education. You cannot do anything without that. And all the basic research in Silicon Valley happened. Yes, Stanford is Berkeley, but without Stanford, I don't see anything which couldn't happen.
So Nuno, I want you to tell the Pizza story, because I think your story really exemplifies a lot of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, so here's one thing that you don't find elsewhere, is people willing to take a chance on an Android company. I mean, we do, in our case, it's fraud detection for payments. And the reason why we ended up there is, as you were saying, we actually ended up doing real-time data analytics as a vague.
And wait, tell the beginning. So when did you start the company and where are you?
So the company started in 2010. We built this technology that we differentiated really well.
And where are you?
Out of Portugal.
Portugal.
Portuguese. And we started there, and there was literally no one that would buy from us. Because I'm going to buy from. In other parts of the world, people buy from Oracle, IBM, and the incumbents, not from some unknown incumbent that's going to go bankrupt tomorrow. That's it. But we were lucky, and I have to give them credit for that. There were some people there that believed in us. So they allowed us to actually start deploying very slowly, start deploying our technology on their system. And that was basically the payment network there. And they really took a bet. They chose us over some very big vendors out there. That allowed us enough breathing room to actually build a technology that we can then demonstrate to others, investors and so on, that, well, this thing works, it's there. And that's where that basically started the ball rolling. So, but coming back to the entrepreneurs and ecosystems and other places, I think the biggest challenge from my experience now in the Valley is other places are still the clients that will need to feed you. So there's no finance. Think about this. There's no financing. We're very limited for early stage businesses, and no one's willing to buy from you. I mean, you can only survive so much out of Cheerios, right? So you have to kind of like break that. Once you do, yeah, you can build business.
And just finish the story. How do you come to base the company in San Francisco?
So the company is not based here. So technically, the company is still headquartered in Portugal. We are a Portuguese company. However, since we proved that the technology worked really well there, and we also proved and demonstrated that we were solving a problem that would be huge in the US with something like, it's called, the move from plastic cards to only mobile and to what's called chip and pin, so EMV. So in Europe, all credit cards have basically a little chip on it, whereas here not yet. When that shift occurs here, there will be a shift also in fraud to other things, to other channels. We've protected those back home. So there was a clear case of value that we were delivering. So I started last year, once we were in production there, once we had clients, I started demonstrating, basically pitching everyone that would listen to me. So I walked up and down on Sand Hill. So people, kind of like what you're saying, we actually said, what the hell are you working on? I had people kicking me out of the rooms, all the spectrum of things. But, as you say, there's also people that kind of like go past that. It's like, okay, maybe this works. Maybe these guys are smart. Let me make a few phone calls. And then say, well, there's a need for this stuff. Yeah, let's work. So we're lucky, fortunate to have SAP Ventures, in this case, are here joining us. Data Collective out of San Francisco as well, joining us. And then there was another issue. It's kind of like, would you invest in a country that basically is bankrupt for all purposes? And they said, yeah, why not? I mean, it's well regulated. It is in an economic strong block. So yeah, we'll invest there. So yeah, in December last year, we invested in us.
And then you moved here, even though the company's based in Portugal.
So this got into something that was being said before. I mean, I would argue that engineering there, and probably not elsewhere in the world, is as good as the engineering you have here in Stanford. And I'll defend that every day. What you don't have there is A, the mentality, and B, the know-how. People here have 60 years of head start of how do you actually sell technology. People there sell technology based on a cost basis. So it costed me 10 days to build this piece of technology, I'm going to charge 10 days plus 30%. Here it's exactly the opposite. What's the value of this? So I would argue that in Europe we actually suck at measuring value, whereas here they're really good at measuring value. And sometimes
Sure, I'm sure. I think this is a great case study, and I'm curious what Sharon, she's going to say the data supports that. But something you were going
Yeah,
to...
I do have a question. When you say that SAP invested in your company in Portugal, really? Did they invest in your company in the US and then you support your engineers?
No.
They actually
They
invest
wired the money there. And
in Portugal.
in Portugal.
Well, then I want to know something about the legal system in Portugal. Is it? No, seriously,
It's a very important
Because
question.
it's, yeah, so the company is based in Portugal.
So the headquarters is based in Portugal. We have this Pizza Inc., which is a subsidiary wholly owned by the Portuguese company. It sucks and it costs a big fortune. That's all I can put it. So there's no experience, there's no legal experience there. People don't know what a warrant in US terms means. People don't know.
Are there two classes of stock in Portugal?
We can, so technically no. So you have to have parallel mechanisms to that. So it's things like options, but that they don't really exist, and they only exist when you actually convert and when you sell the company and when you have liquidity events. So our bylaws or something like that. So that answers your question. Whereas here there will be something like this.
And then I was going to ask about bankruptcy laws, because I've found the greatest inhibitor to entrepreneurship are bankruptcy laws. I know that without talking about Portugal, because I don't know, I know in Spain, for example, bankruptcy leads to real personal consequences to the entrepreneurs. And that has inhibited entrepreneurial growth.
Same story there.
Same story.
But Sharon, what is you were talking a little bit beforehand about the data
Yeah,
around exits and showing that maybe some of this disparity between the
He just
value.
wants to see how you.
I know.
Oh, thanks for that.
Started that
Yeah, this is
conversation.
great. Yeah, you were saying some of the data supports.
Yeah, as it relates to exits, the data supports that geography does not matter. You do not need to be in Silicon Valley to have a very successful and lucrative exit, in particular for your investors. And actually, this is really important for entrepreneurs to understand that investor return is the measure, not hype. Because what we hear about are the Silicon Valley IPOs, and they're phenomenal. We love them and bless them for being, because they get more entrepreneurs in the pipeline. But the truth of the data is that geography does not matter. And certainly in our own portfolio, so bringing it down very personally, we've had success regardless of geography. So our most recent IPO was this summer, Brony Organic Innovations out of UC Davis. And she's a phenomenal biotech entrepreneur, serial biotech entrepreneur, never come to the Valley, and has run both companies spinning out of UC Davis. And this matters to debunking the myth of entrepreneurship. You know, that one or two guys in a garage is a myth, and the other myth is that you must be here.
So where was the
Just
IPO?
the guys in the garage.
No, the IPO was certainly in the U.S., so I'm not talking about
this illustration of what the IPO was here still.
Absolutely, in the U.S., but my point is about Silicon Valley. You don't need to be, having said that, let's talk about venture capitalists. Of course, the numbers are here, but there are things that you can do to increase investment in the local market. And one of the things to do, for example, is take a look at bankruptcy laws and what happens, and that spurs innovation investment.
Michelle, are there elements of the Silicon Valley community here that you ever feel work against Cloudflare in terms of the frothiness, the constant poaching of employees, the expectations of massive growth? You're smiling knowing they still have to stop.
It is really expensive to hire people in Silicon Valley. I mean, salaries here are, well, I don't know why everyone in the world doesn't move to Silicon Valley. It's just, salaries here are very, very high. So yes, so things you talk about. There's all these big tech companies have all these amazing perks. You know, the big thing is Google's food is awesome, and now the big thing is that Dropbox's food is even better than Google. That's like one of their selling points. You know, we don't even cater lunch for our team, and so does that put us at a disadvantage? So what I always argue is no, because I think really the best engineers, like the best people, if you're really a talented person, you actually don't care about that stuff. You want to go work somewhere where they're going to make a difference, and you're actually going to work on something that people use. And so we're lucky, 4% of the web's requests flow through our network every single month. And so when an engineer pushes a line of code, it touches 800 million people over the course of that month. And so for us, engineers want to work here because we have a team of less than 70 people where they're going to have huge ownership, and when they push something, it touches the world. Now, if you're, and we're lucky, we've been successful, but if you are maybe not as successful, then these sorts of things, the hire anyone around the world, best at what they do, we want you to come work for us. But people just, I mean, the government makes it really hard. And now, thankfully, there's lots of people working on this, including Dave McClure, who's going to speak after us. And I think that they're going to make progress on that. But in the interim, you know, countries can actually use that to their advantage. So Canada, close by the United States, actually bought a billboard on the 101 earlier in the fall saying, can't get an H-1B visa, they're gone. They are gone until next October, but you can start to apply again in April. But like, if you want to hire somebody who's highly skilled, you can until next October if they're not an American citizen, with some exceptions. I mean, a little bit dramatic, but with some exceptions. And so Canada took out a billboard on the 101 saying, can't get an H-1B, come to Canada. And that's smart. I mean, I was like, go Canada, and I'm Canadian, so I was like, go Canada. But like, good for them. And you know, London is doing all these sorts of things with like R&D tax credits, where if you were actually doing engineering in the city of London, they will pay you 225% of the engineer's salary. That is like, I know companies who have delayed fundraising rounds just through this R&D tax credit program. And so, you know, it's kind of an opportunity. Some of the things that don't work against here, other countries can take advantage of.
Sasha, you have a very global investment perspective. Now, I want to ask you one, what are the other really clusters of entrepreneurial energy that you look at? And then two, if you were funding a new host company, Feedside, would you have made a similar kind of decision of urging him to start operations here in Silicon Valley in addition to his engineering talent in Portugal?
I do have a global perspective, so I cannot say that everything in this country works better than anywhere in the world. But it is the largest technology market, and it's impossible to ignore it. And that is why if you started a company in Portugal or London or Russia or Brazil or whatever, and it happens to cater to this segment of the community which uses high-tech products, you have to be here. Now when that changes, yeah, and say China will become the largest technology market, who knows, it might, right? That probably would want to open an office there. But for now, that's where the growth is and the largest market is. Having said all that, I don't see how everybody should move here. That is why maybe I'll be contrary to your desire to open up doors and everybody must come here. Why? When you can have your engineering group in Portugal, other companies having sales offices here can have their centers in Ireland, they can have it in India, anywhere. So in my perspective, that the world has become so really unified when it comes to technology that you kind of, if you're a global operator, you decide where your shop should be. If you are producing hardware, and there are still companies who do that, and Apple has glorified it again, go to China. Actually, not to China, it's too expensive now. Malaysia, Indonesia, do it well. Do you want to make production in Russia? Oh no, never. But I would always use an idea lab in Russia because they come up with all kinds of crazy ideas nobody else in the world will. Can they build a team around it? Not really. So I would pull in some CEOs, some CTOs, maybe tap into your pool and say, okay, you guys come in and do something. So to me, that's where the future is. And if I look at the centers of excellence, I've seen fascinating deals coming out of Ireland and Israel. I haven't seen much from Portugal yet, but I guess that will change. And here I would make a comment. If a country like Israel never had a huge domestic market, they learn how to market what they have to the outside world. And there is a reason there is so much US money going into Israeli technology companies, because the companies mostly operate here. Now, if you are a big market like Brazil or China or Russia, you can have all kinds of deals which will satisfy the domestic market. So in the sense of a country like Portugal, I guess you need to decide. You want to bring money in there, do you have a market big enough for the IT product? Or do you want to play a role in the global supply chain when it comes to technology and say we'll be like Israel, we'll come up with brilliant ideas, build the core, and then send a guy like that to Silicon Valley and grab those consumers who will build the company global.
Yeah.
And then eventually the domestic market will pick up, and then you go back there and sell there, right?
The domestic market there are almost 10 million people that buy from you. If you're a consumer play, and if you're an enterprise play, there are probably like 100 companies that can buy from you. I mean, our startup, year 2, we made it to the top 100, 150 IT companies in revenue. That kind of tells you how small it is. It's not that we're doing
Maybe you're just
billions and
not
billions of revenue, so that kind of tells you a little bit. But I think, in my perspective, we got no other option than to follow a model like Israel. I mean, where even in our area, mainly. So there's the Waze, as example, that technology there, biz dev here, exit
That company acquired by Google.
yeah, it exit for 1.1 billion. In our space, or another company just recently, Trust Year, bought by IBM for 800 million. But the interesting thing is the halo effect that creates there, not here. I mean, these companies, they're bought by companies typically here, but the halo effect that it creates there, because the engineers from those companies, they will leave 1 year or 6 months after that, and they cashed in enough money to actually bootstrap that. So Trust Year exits, a couple months later, another company, just because the guy that could not bought Trust Year to IBM buys the second player there. And that, the 13 people team, it's a 110 million exit. They had barely started, but they were the second player on that space. And that halo effect just then keeps building and building, and I think that what they're doing there is what countries like Portugal, Ireland, and so on have to follow.
So we have a couple minutes now for the audience to ask some questions. If you have a question, we have a roving microphone in the back. Just perhaps raise your hand. While you guys think of questions, Sharon, let me ask you. 2013 seems like it was a pivotal moment for women and entrepreneurship, with the publication of Lean In, the debate over the Twitter board. Now, quickly, is that illusory, or do you think that was true? That something kind of special?
I actually see the pivotal year as probably 2011. There was a substantial shift in the media coverage, thank you very much, women entrepreneurs in particular. There were a few bits of important data that came out that mattered around that. Apologies, but one of your competitors published a fantastic report showing that venture returns for women-led companies outperformed their male competitors by 64%. Had a 64%, higher likelihood of exiting positively for their investors. So there were some really interesting things that converged, that really came to that change. Certainly Lean In is part of that. And by the way, for those in the room who are the policy folks, I'll share with you that the U.S. estimates that if we could ensure that women entrepreneurs have the same access to capital as their male counterparts, we would see our economic recovery. 6 million jobs within 5 years, 3 million of those within the first 2 years. So if there's a place to put investment, it's untapped resources. Globally, women are half of the college degrees, half of the PhDs. Within Portugal, I know they're half of the PhDs, and I think they've been half of the college degrees for almost 30 years. So this is an untapped potential that I'll just highlight for those in the room. And for those entrepreneurs in the room, I'd highlight that companies that have inclusive founding teams outperform. They just do. And so well done you, and I'm sure you have one as well. If you don't, you will. Fantastic. So I think you're right, something pivoted, has changed, and certainly when we added capital to our mix, we were astonished to find all of the untapped opportunity and real potential in the pipeline that we're now investing in.
Great. We have a next question.
Yes, my name is Ben Quinn with Anti-Teach Minorities They Teach Together. And my question is about access to both internet and the technical tool sets to let entrepreneurs play. So hackerspaces, to mentorships, and et cetera, to amplify the effect. So much I see floundering women and mentoring without the tool sets to compete with the big boys, that they're cut out, stopped, and then discouraged.
Ben, are you asking specifically about women? Is that what I
Both
understand?
women and minorities, in that there is a bias for engineering or STEAM or...
So you're correct, women are only 30% of the STEM degrees in the U.S. That's a problem. And that's a real barrier to participation, certainly. Although, by the way, companies have a diverse set of skill sets, so I'm not convinced that that's the only issue at play as it relates to venture. But having said that, there's great research out of the Clayman Institute at Stanford that shows that women globally still under-self-assess as it relates to math and sciences. It manifests in multiple ways. We drop out of the math and sciences. We certainly don't aspire to be engineers the way that men do. And that's a societal barrier that we certainly need to address. Having said that, and I think we were talking about this earlier, there is still an abundant pipeline at the ready that if we could get those who are currently ready and able, fully participating in entrepreneurship, I assure you that floodgate would open They were designed for a predominantly male student body, and they haven't adjusted since. And that's true all the way up through the universities. And that's not to blame anyone, that's just the truth. And if you look at redesigning programs, programs that are true redesigns of how you teach math and sciences, you see young women perform on par, if not better than their male counterparts, and same with minorities. So I think there's some redesign work that we need to do as a society.
I have to say something. I'm sitting on this panel with all the women. I just want to say that I have a totally different opinion, and I know that Sharon and I will like each other. Not really, we're friends in a way.
We're just playing enemies on the stage.
No, but I believe that we make investments regardless of it's female, the color, minority, whatever. It makes sense, it doesn't make sense. Investor puts money into a company to make money. Shocking, I know, sounds weird. But that's what it is. And I'm thrilled that there are various programs to give access to underprivileged people and women and whatever. But I don't consider myself a female investor. I do not believe in female and male writers, composers, or investors. It's either you do it or you don't do it. In that sense, I agree that we need to have access. But currently, it's so easy to start a business. Oh my God, with all the resources online, you don't need a garage to start a business. So in that sense, I think that forget what your origin is, where you were born, where you went to school, what gender you are. It's really irrelevant. What is relevant? Whether you have that entrepreneurial spirit in you or you don't. And if you do, you will find a way. And granted, it's much easier to do it in Silicon Valley, and it's one of the other aspects that it is easier. But I just wanted to do a disclaimer. Yes, I sit on this panel, but I don't believe in male and female investors.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question in the second row.
Thank you for taking my question. So specifically, I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts or opinions? Last 6 to 9 months, there has been a lot of buzz in reference to digital currency, specifically Bitcoin. I'm curious of your position or opinion, not as a financial instrument of speculation, but more as a future of e-commerce, digital exchange of currency, or value, sorry.
Great question. Is the Bitcoin disruption real? You know that.
It is, and I love it because it's yet another channel for me to take care of. So, yeah, good. Looking at
More fraud opportunities to solve.
It's going to be real. There will be resistance, but it's going to be probably sooner than people expect. It's going to be real.
I think it's really real. It's real, and unfortunately, we missed the first opportunity to invest. But now there are so many spin-offs, and there were many funds built around the Bitcoin phenomenon.
Is it real as a currency or as a distributed technology that those other applications?
I think we don't really know. I think it's early days of it, but my answer to it is it's real, but we don't know what real is yet. My own observation is it's both, and one of those will win. Because I don't know that it will continue to be both. I think one of those will somehow prove to be supported, and that will be what it is.
This definitely should not be ignored, that's for sure.
Great. Any other questions in the audience? Yes, sir.
Hi, how's it going? Snapchat, is it really worth $3 billion? Are we in a tech bubble? Venture capitalists have tightened their wallets a little bit. Are angel investors the best strategy for raising capital? Thanks.
Michelle, things are looking a little frothy. Is Snapchat or whatever? I can't even keep track of the $2 billion. $3 billion.
There's $3 billion
But then they raised
They raise money.
Yeah, raise money for.
They took $50 million as an investment. Yeah, but what was the question?
Is it kind of a larger, illogical mania gripping the tech community?
The company is worth as much as somebody is willing to pay. So somebody will come in and they'll pay them whatever they want.
Well, as an economist, the answer is yes, it's worth what someone's willing to pay. But is someone an idiot for paying that? Probably.
We may not have any Snapchat users here on the panel.
I know, I download everything because I'm a teenager at home. So I must follow what's on, so I do have it still. But I will make jokes like that because I remember Facebook was hugely overvalued, everybody was saying. And then an investor named Yuri Milner shows up and does what he does. And then Facebook becomes becomes what it becomes, so I don't know. And I've never dismissed investors, never known.
I retract my sarcasm.
People are very similar.
I think there's an interesting thing happening in Angel. So to go to the end of the question about would you take venture or Angel, I think if you're an entrepreneur, it's your seat. I think you should drive very aggressively towards what you want. Because you actually do have choices right now in a way that is brand new and very interesting. I think that there's fantastic disruption happening in investment right now. That investors are, that venture has had a bit of a contraction was a good thing. And what you're seeing emerging is actually quite interesting and innovative. And as an entrepreneur, I would be very excited to be raising capital right now because I think the world is your oyster and you get to choose what fits you best.
And I don't think we're in a bubble right now. I mean, in my opinion, I mean, there's always this, ever since 2000, I feel like every few years the same meme comes back. It's like, are we in a bubble, are we frothy? And then it gets pulled back, then it comes back again. It's just like cyclical over and over again. But it's nothing like, no, we're not in a bubble.
I think we're in a little bit of an accelerator bubble. I'll
Oh,
say
yeah,
that.
accelerator.
I think there's a lot of
Crazy.
$25,000 checks going out there that just shouldn't be written. And I think there's no diligence behind them. And that doesn't serve the entrepreneur well, by the way. Just the check without any sort of diligence. Part of the fundraising process, in my opinion, is iterating with investors so that you can figure out, really what is an investable opportunity. And that same iteration should be happening with customers. And so to me, some of the accelerator stuff that I'm not a real fan of is those that aren't pursuing those customer dialogues and the investor dialogues.
Great, I think, we have one more question, yes, sir.
Well, first of all, thank you all for your time. It's been really interesting. I want to relate something that we started off with what you guys were all saying. Minister, I happen to agree with you. We're heading towards a converged economy. That's going to happen, in my opinion. It will give your country a much more level playing field with which to do more and better business in the future. Now, I want to combine that with what you guys were all saying. There's tons of talent everywhere. You don't need to be here to have a great company, a good idea, a successful company. So combining that with what you're saying, why is selling to Silicon Valley sort of the preconceived idea of success? Why not build something and house it somewhere else? I mean, Silicon Valley, Detroit was the head of auto forever and ever, and now it's not anymore. You can have a great auto company anywhere in the world. That's kind of the conclusion that I see. Silicon Valley one day will be its own Detroit. Who's to say that's not happening right now? And I'm curious in your opinion, especially those who have left Silicon Valley, left their country to come to Silicon Valley, why isn't that happening right now? Why are we still in a place where the opinion is, well, you've got to sell to Google. Why not build your own and have people sell to you in Portugal?
And I'll make an unusual observation. The one big element which is lacking in emerging markets is a sophisticated investor. And that's the only element lacking. We see a lot of entrepreneurs and resources, but money which will be put into helping to build a company is lacking. Because usually in emerging markets and even in Europe, investors make money on something else. In Russia it was raw materials, I don't know, somewhere it was tourism, somewhere it was something else. So when you're an entrepreneur and you already built something and you want to expand, you need some, what we call it, smart money to help you do that. And when you come to invest in emerging markets, who gives you $1 million, and then, the analogy I make is like planting something in a pot, in a plant, and taking it out all the time, see if the roots have grown, right? And that's what investors in domestic markets usually do. That's one. The second one, they don't treat an entrepreneur as an equal. It's always, I gave you money, you report to me. I'm better than you are. And that's not what we do in Silicon Valley. If I put money into a company, my money is at risk. I want you to succeed, and that's the partnership. And another one, even if, say, you made a mistake, as an investor here, we'll let you come back if you recognize the mistake and have a second chance. Not happening in other markets, including Europe, including London, including France, including Spain. It just, that's the phenomenon. So I know there will be many answers to your question, but that is my answer because I'm from that world, from the investment world. I say with no sophisticated investors, domestic oil. And the government is not a substitution for that.
But it's more than that. It's not just finance. It's not just capital. So again, coming back to, will people buy your product? Will a big company entrepreneurship. I mean, it's just not, and that's not going to move the needle. And so you need people who are willing to build big companies in their local economies, and whether they go public on the local stock exchange, hard to get there, or they're going to be acquired at some point, because there needs to be a financial exit for the financiers for them to keep reinvesting back. And so then you need the big companies in those markets to make acquisitions of startups. It's kind of complicated. So that's why again, it's happening. There's all these countries trying to spur this, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a very long shift. And your point of, well, that'll be the demise of Silicon Valley. Maybe, unless we can stay relevant and competitive. And I think that there's lots of people here who are very well invested in making sure that the Valley stays competitive and the place of innovation for the world.
We'll give you the last word.
And I'll argue, having also Portuguese investors, I'll fully agree with you. I've never been pushed so hard in my life like in this last year with the US investors. And that has been just amazing in the sense that I have to be careful here because a lot of Portuguese people around. People there will give you money, but regardless of who you are, they'll think that you're kind of like working for them. Okay? Whereas here, fortunate enough to have all these large investors with you, they will treat you as an equal, regardless of who you are. They give you money, so they want you to succeed. They don't want you to kind of like send them the report of the last week's whatever bid you did. They don't give a shit about that. What they care is, are you building the team right? Are you building for scaling? Are you building having the right resources? Do you have what you need to do your job? And that is just not there. And that is the kind of things that it will take cycles of entrepreneurs becoming investors and keeping that as it's been going on for so long to build up there. Otherwise, it'll be just kind of like money managers type of people, risk averse, and it's just not going to get successful. Thank you.
All right, let's give a big round of applause for our panel.